As I promised you guys last week, today I'm going to do some landscape photography. And you gotta be wondering, landscape, nature, you know, beautiful backgrounds. Why am I downtown? Because landscape doesn't necessarily mean just out in the country. Sometimes it means the city behind me. I'll walk you through one photo here downtown for a landscape, and then I will walk you through another photo in one of my favorite parks. I'll be in Millennium Park, and I'll do another one there, which will be a little bit more country style. This photo, I've chosen the bridge. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit here, make sure I'm good and focused on it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to shoot this at f11, which will give me a very good depth of field. It'll have as much of this in focus as possible, and I'll show you that photo in a second. I'm going to take it with my other camera because I don't know how to get the settings I want for stills and for video at the same time, so I'll be right back. So when I shoot things for landscapes, I like to go in aperture priority so I can control the depth of field I'm getting. In this case, I chose aperture f11. That way I would get a nice depth of field, as much of it in focus as possible. And I went with a pretty wide angle. I just kind of zoomed into what felt right. So here's that photo. I hope you like it. Here's another good idea of a landscape. Kind of crop it in like this a little bit. It's kind of cool. Another thing you can do is tilt it on the side like this, zoom in a little bit, maybe even have more building than lawn. So there's a couple different styles of inner city landscapes right there I just showed you, and I'll show you some country ones in a moment. But basically I recommend using aperture priority. Use somewhere around f8, f11, something middle of the range to keep it nice and sharp, but to give you a good depth of field. Maybe medium wide angle up to low telephoto, and just have some fun. Frame it in whatever looks comfortable to you. If it looks comfortable in the photo, it'll probably turn out nice. So don't try to think too much about it. Relax and enjoy. Just experiment. So I've shown you a few examples of cityscapes. Now I'm in the middle of Millennium Park, and I'll show you a few country style landscapes. It's a little overcast today, unlike last week when I did the first half of the video where it was just beautiful outside. So instead of getting a few billowy clouds in the background, it's going to be pretty much solid cloud cover. Not much I can do about that, unfortunately. But I'll still give you the principles of landscape photography, give you a couple examples to the best of my ability, and we'll go from there. Because today is a little more overcast than last week, I've chosen to go with a slightly wider aperture, and I'm shooting at f8 instead of f11. It's still going to give me a pretty good field of view, but it's going to brighten the photos up a little bit and let me use a slower ISO. As with any photograph, you want to choose a point of interest. In this case, sorry about being so dark, I'm going to try to get these flowers right here. I've got a lot of backlight to deal with, so the auto settings used for video are a little bit harder for me, but that'll balance out when I have the other camera in manual. So I took a couple photos with the flowers in the center, a couple of them off to the left, a couple of them off to the right, and even a more close-up of the flowers. But I tried to get a lot of the background in there as well, like the trees, the hills, because I don't want it to just be, boom, here's a flower. I want you to see the whole environment. So choosing to focus just on the flowers takes away from the rest of the environment. But if you look up over here, all these trees, and then the flowers down here below them, you get a pretty good shot, and you get to see the true beauty of the flower as in comparative to the rest of the environment. And that's what makes a photo like this really stick out. So one of the chief principles I was using in that photo was the rule of thirds. So you don't want things too centered or too even because it just looks unnatural. And that's not really how we view things. So I got about roughly a third to the sky and the trees, about a third to the flowers, and a little bit of foreground. And it balances it out. It makes it much more appealing to look at. A composition like this is pretty nice. You got the hill in the background, a little bit of the field in the foreground, and then the top third will be the sky. Stuff like this, I mean, these make great landscape photos. Just pan a little to the right, a little to the left, find your point of interest, and then just click off a photo. Sometimes, to get a good landscape, just pick one subject, like this tree right here, and maybe do a portrait like this. I mean, you can do a pretty good landscape with it as well. Sometimes you just pick a small subject, zoom in, and let a couple trees frame it out. You can get a pretty nice photo this way. Sometimes you get lucky and just see some really gorgeous stuff while you're walking. Like this creek right here and these reeds at the far end. I'm going to try to get a photo of this to get it to show the way I can see it. So I'm going to switch cameras and see what I can show you. So what I did there was I put the creek in the lower third moving up towards the outer part of the photo, and I had the reeds as the subject. I hope you like it. Gotta love being in Michigan. Look at that, just a couple minutes later, it's clearing up a little bit. It's absolutely gorgeous out here. So, just takes a few minutes. It's amazing the difference a little sun will make. When I was trying to focus on these earlier, the camera kept going black. Now you can actually see them in there. It's really weird. Yeah, I just kind of happened across this little puddle on top of a rock and thought it was kind of cute. It's really turning out to be a beautiful day now. I'm glad I came out. I mean, it was pretty sketchy when I left. I thought it was going to start pouring. Rolled the dice, took a chance, and the weather's clearing up nicely. See if I can't get a few more landscape photos for you. And there's one more principle I'd like to go over, and that's the even odd rule. In nature, it seems to be odd numbers look more comfortable in pictures and even numbers look more cramped. I'll try to give you a couple examples of this. This is the best example I could find right now of even numbers kind of looking forced. In nature, it's really hard to find even numbers, but the even spacing of the three trees in back, the one in the front, it just looks crowded. So for a pretty good example of odd numbers, this little cluster of three trees right here, that looks pretty good. You can frame it in, maybe get something off to the side. Sometimes you can find a point of interest like these dead trees over here and use those to stick out and get you a pretty interesting landscape. Not all landscape photos have to be like a mile away and showing everything. Sometimes just the simplest thing, like a little plant like this, can make for some of the best landscape photos. I hope with this video I've been able to give you a good insight on landscape photography. So if you've liked this video or learned something from it, please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for future episodes, and please share this video with others. And thank you and have a great day.